All right, let's jump right in, shall we? Today's deep dive is all about the compatibility of Enneagram Type 2s and Type 6s. And, it's a pairing that's definitely got some layers to unpack. On the one hand, we've got our Type 2s. The giver's always there with a helping hand, heart on their sleeves, super generous, empathetic, always putting others first. And then on the flip side, we have our Type 6s, the Loyalists,
Yeah.
driven by that need for security. They can be a little anxious sometimes, but man, are they devoted.
It really is a fascinating dynamic, isn't it? When you look at their core motivations, you might think they're on completely different wavelengths, but in a lot of ways, their needs actually complement each other. Like that type two's constant need to care for others, well, it lines up perfectly with what the type 6 is looking for, that sense of security and unwavering support.
So you're saying there's a potential for a really solid foundation there?
Absolutely. And then on the other side of the coin, you have the type 6 who offers that rock solid loyalty and commitment that a type 2 often craves deep down. It's like they each bring something to the table that the other one is inherently seeking.
I like that. They each have a piece of the puzzle the other one needs. But I'm
Hmm.
also curious, we're talking about compatibility, so let's get real. What does this dynamic look like in, say, everyday life? How do these two types actually navigate the day-to-day stuff?
Okay, so picture this. It's been a crazy day. You're walking in the door feeling totally drained, and bam, there's your type 2 partner, all smiles. Maybe they've got dinner already on the table, your favorite. They just have this way of making you feel instantly cared for. And then you've got your type 6 partner, solid as a rock, the one making sure the bills are paid, the house is safe, always thinking about the future.
I've got to say, so far, it sounds pretty idyllic. But you mentioned earlier that this pairing can be complex. Where do the bumps in the road come in?
Well, communication can be a bit of a minefield, honestly. Type 2s, they communicate through their emotions, super expressive, very upfront about how they feel. But type 6s, they're more on the cautious side. They analyze everything, might hesitate before opening up, or maybe even zero in on potential problems.
Oh, yeah. That's definitely a recipe for miscommunication.
Yeah.
I mean, you can easily see how a type 2 might feel like, wait, are you even listening to me? Do you even care? When their partner isn't mirroring that emotional intensity.
Yeah.
And then the type 6 might be sitting there feeling overwhelmed by all the feelings.
Exactly. And that's where things can get tricky. It's almost like they're speaking different love languages. The key is for both sides to recognize those differences and make a conscious effort to bridge the gap.
Makes sense. So, like, how would they even begin to do that?
Well, for the type 2, it might mean taking a step back, practicing a little patience, realizing that their partner's love might show up in actions more than words. And for the type 6, it's about making an effort to open up, even if it feels uncomfortable, letting their guard down a little and letting those emotions out.
So basically, a whole lot of self-awareness and a willingness to meet in the middle.
You got it.
Oh,
But here's another layer to consider. We've been talking about these types in their best case scenario forms, but as anyone who's even a little familiar with the Enneagram knows, nobody's perfect. We all have our healthy moments and our not so healthy moments. So what happens to this dynamic when one or both partners are operating from a less healthy space? Things can get a little.
oh yeah, that's what I was just thinking. Like, how does this whole thing shift when the not-so-great sides of these types start to show up?
Okay, well, let's say a type 2 is in a not so healthy place. That need to give, it can turn into something almost obsessive, like they're constantly trying to fix their partner's problems or looking for validation through those acts of service.
So it becomes less about genuine care and more about, like, needing to be needed.
Right. And then the type 6 who's already looking for security might start to lean into that a little too much. And before you know it, you've got a full-blown codependent situation. Not exactly the healthy dynamic we were talking about earlier.
Okay, so that's the unhealthy type 2. What about the unhealthy type 6? How does that play out in this pairing?
Well, things can get little intense. Unhealthy type 6 energy, think suspicion, anxiety, maybe even some controlling behavior. They might be constantly questioning their partner's motives, looking for signs that they're going to leave. And for the type 2 who thrives on that sense of connection, that can feel suffocating, like they're constantly being watched and judged.
Yeah,
Yeah, it really can create this imbalance in the relationship.
definitely not what we're aiming for. But okay, we've talked about some of the potential pitfalls. Let's switch gears a bit. What about the good stuff? What makes this pairing so unique? Like, what are some of the strengths a type 2 and a type 6 can bring to a relationship?
Oh man, where do I even begin? Honestly, one of the most beautiful things about these two is that they just get each other on a deep emotional level. They're both so in tune with the needs of others. They genuinely want to make their partner happy. And that creates this incredibly supportive environment, where both people feel seen and heard and truly loved.
It sounds like they can really create that safe space for each other to just be themselves.
Exactly. And that sense of safety is especially crucial for the type 6, with all that anxiety and worry about what might happen. Having a type 2 partner who just radiates warmth and acceptance, that can be incredibly grounding.
Now, I'm also curious about shared values. You mentioned earlier how their core motivations can actually line up. How does that play out in their values and outlook on life?
Well, think about it. Type 2s and type 6s,
Hmm.
they both have this incredibly strong sense of loyalty, commitment, responsibility. Relationships are huge for both of them. Family, community, those things really matter. And they often have a very similar moral compass, like a deep desire to make the world a better place. So when you have that kind of alignment in your values, it's like, powerful stuff. It creates this sense of shared purpose.
So it goes way beyond just the emotional connection. There's a deeper sense of like being on the same page, soul level kind of thing.
Exactly. And let's not forget how they balance each other out. Remember that dance we were talking about earlier? Well, a type 2's natural enthusiasm, their optimism, that can be so good for a type 6, helping them loosen up a bit, be more spontaneous. And then the type 6, they bring that structure, that grounded energy that a type 2 sometimes needs.
So they really do complete each other in a way, like two halves of a whole.
That's a perfect way to put it. They complement each other so beautifully. Now, let's imagine this couple is facing a big life change, like, I don't know, maybe a job relocation or a family illness. How do you think they'd approach that together?
Well, based on what we've talked about so far, I have a feeling their initial reactions might be pretty different.
You're right on the money. When stress hits, a type 2's instinct is to reach out for emotional support, connection. They want to talk it out, process those feelings, make sure they feel understood. But a type 6, they go straight into problem-solving mode, gathering information, making a plan, trying to regain a sense of control.
So you could totally see a scenario where the type 2 feels ignored, like their emotional needs aren't being met, and the type 6 is feeling overwhelmed by all the feelings.
Exactly. But here's the thing. If they're both self-aware, if they're truly committed to working together, they can actually use those differences to their advantage. Like, the type 2 can provide that emotional support that the type 6 needs to manage their anxiety. And the type 6, they can offer those practical solutions, the reassurance that helps the type 2 feel more grounded.
It's all about finding that balance, right, where each person brings their unique strengths to the table.
Right, and that's what makes a true partnership. But let's be real, there are going to be times when those differences lead to conflict. So how can they learn to communicate better, especially in those heated moments?
Well, that's where good communication skills come in, right? It's crucial for both of them.
Absolutely. For the type 2, it might mean learning to be more direct, more assertive when expressing their needs, not falling into the trap of guilt tripping or trying to manipulate, and setting those healthy boundaries. For the type 6, it's about getting in touch with those feelings, communicating their fears and anxieties in a healthy way, and really listening to understand their partner's perspective.
So once again, it's a two-way street. Both sides got to put in the effort. Okay, let's talk about something that can make or break a relationship. Money. How do you think a type 2 and a type 6 would approach managing their finances as a couple?
Ooh, now this is where things can get interesting. See, a type 2, with that big heart and focus on relationships, might be more inclined to spend money on experiences, gifts, or even helping others. But a type 6, with their need for security and planning, they're going to be a lot more cautious. They'll want that budget, that savings plan, everything neatly
Oh,
organized.
I can already see the potential for clashes. Like, imagine the type 2 wants to take a spontaneous vacation, and the type 6 is all about saving for a down payment on a house.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic scenario. But here's the thing. If they can approach these differences with understanding and compromise, it can actually become a strength. Like, the type 2 can help the type 6 loosen up a little, enjoy the moment, and the type 6 can bring that stability, that long-term vision that gives the type 2 peace of mind.
So again, it's all about finding that sweet spot where their differences complement each other.
Right, exactly. And it all comes back to self-awareness. Are they willing to see things from the other person's perspective, to understand where they're coming from? Now, I know we've been talking a lot about the practical stuff, but I think one of the most fascinating aspects of this pairing is their potential for mutual growth. Like, they can really help each other evolve and become better versions of themselves.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
I definitely want to hear more about that. I'm all about how relationships can help us grow.
Well, think about it. A type 2's capacity for love and compassion. That can be so healing for a type 6 who struggles with anxiety and self-doubt. They can help the type 6 open up, trust their gut, and really embrace vulnerability. And then on the flip side, the type 6's grounded nature, their practicality, that can give a type 2 the stability and support they need to figure out what they truly want, what their own needs are.
So it's like this beautiful exchange where they each provide the missing pieces for each other.
Right. And that's what makes this pairing so powerful. It's not about finding someone who completes you. It's about finding someone who inspires you to become the best version of yourself.
Love that. Okay, we've covered communication, conflict, shared values, even finances. But there's one more thing I'd love to touch on. Intimacy. How do their Enneagram types influence their connection in the bedroom?
That's a great question. Well, generally speaking, type 2s tend to be pretty enthusiastic when it comes to intimacy, warm, affectionate. They really want to please their partner, create a romantic, sensual experience. But type 6s, with their need for security and reassurance, might be a little more hesitant. They need to feel safe, trusted, emotionally connected before they can fully let go.
So it sounds like communication and emotional intimacy are key for both partners to really enjoy that aspect of the relationship.
Absolutely. And again, that's where that type 2 energy can be so amazing. Their natural warmth and affection can help the type 6 relax, open up, and experience a level of intimacy they might not have thought possible.
Sounds pretty magical. But what happens when things aren't so smooth? When there's a conflict or a misunderstanding, even in the bedroom. How do these two types navigate that?
It all comes back to communication, doesn't it? For the type 2, it's about expressing their needs and desires clearly, not taking their partner's hesitation personally. And for the type 6, it's about communicating their fears and insecurities in a vulnerable way without shutting down or getting defensive.
So creating that safe space for open and honest dialogue is crucial, even when it comes to, sensitive topics.
Exactly. And that's where having that foundation of trust and emotional intimacy is so important. If they've already built that strong connection in other areas of their relationship, it makes it a lot easier to work through those challenges in the bedroom.
Okay, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about self-awareness.
Mhm.
How can both partners use the Enneagram as a tool for personal growth within this relationship?
The Enneagram is such a powerful tool because it helps us understand ourselves and our partners on a much deeper level. And when a type 2 and a type 6 both understand their own Enneagram types, they can really gain valuable insights into their motivations, their fears, their patterns of behavior. And that awareness can help them in so many ways.
Like how? Give me some examples.
Well, for one, it can help them communicate more effectively. By understanding each other's communication styles, they can learn to speak each other's language and avoid those miscommunications we were talking about earlier. It can also help them manage conflict better. When you know your own triggers and your partner's sensitivities, you can navigate those disagreements with more empathy and understanding. And of course, it can help them set healthy boundaries. When you recognize your own needs and limits, you can create a relationship that's both supportive and sustainable.
So it's not just about understanding yourself, it's about using that knowledge to create a healthier, more fulfilling relationship.
Exactly. And it's also about celebrating those differences. Instead of seeing them as obstacles, they can learn to appreciate how their unique strengths complement each other.
So basically, the Enneagram can be like a roadmap for a more conscious, fulfilling relationship.
Absolutely. It's not about changing who you are or trying to fit into some perfect mold. It's about using this knowledge to become more self-aware, more compassionate, more understanding.
Okay, so for our listener who's been hanging on every word, what's the one key takeaway you want them to walk away with?
A type 2 and type 6 pairing. It has the potential to be so incredibly enriching, so fulfilling, but it takes work. Both people have to be willing to put in the effort, to be open to communicating, to growing, to understanding each other on a deeper level. Remember, true compatibility. It's not about finding someone who's perfect for you. It's about finding someone who inspires you to become the best version of yourself.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and insights with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. And to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights into the dynamics of type 2 and type 6 compatibility. Remember, the Enneagram is a tool for self-discovery and growth. And by understanding your own type and the types of the people you're in relationship with, you can navigate all the complexities of human connection with more awareness, compassion, and grace. Yeah, it's a journey, isn't it? Not a destination.
Exactly. And it's a journey that can be so much richer when you have the right tools and the right mindset.
Couldn't agree more. Well, we've covered so much ground today, from communication styles to conflict resolution, intimacy, even finances. It's been a truly fascinating exploration of this unique pairing.
It really has. And I have to say, it's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
Likewise. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into type 2 and type 6 compatibility, what's the one thing you want our listener to take away from all this? What's the most important message you want to leave them with?
Hmm. That's a good question. I think it's important to remember that when a type 2 and a type 6 come together, they have this incredible opportunity to create something really special, a bond that's both deeply supportive and, really passionate. But, and this is important, like any relationship, it takes work. It takes understanding. And it takes a willingness to embrace all of it. The good, the bad, the challenges that come with loving someone who might see the world a little differently than you do.
It's about seeing those differences not as obstacles, but as opportunities, right?
Exactly. And I think that's true for any relationship, regardless of Enneagram types. The beauty lies in those differences. It's what makes each connection unique and special.
Well said. And on that note, I want to thank you again for joining us today and sharing your insights. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
The pleasure was all mine.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in and joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful and maybe even a little bit inspiring. Remember, every relationship has its own unique dynamics, its own strengths and challenges. And by understanding those dynamics, by using tools like the Enneagram to gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and our partners, we can create more fulfilling and meaningful connections. So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the fascinating world of personality and relationships. Until next time, happy connecting.